Well, it's 1 o'clock here in Boston, and it is time to get started. Hi, welcome to TransForm Tuesday. My name is Dave McCormick. I'm VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software. And today we'll be going over a more technical topic. Actually, it's a continuation of a somewhat technical topic that has to do with what we call on-device assets. But before I jump into that, I just want to make sure that everyone could see my screen and that my audio is coming through okay. So if you could put that either in the chat window or in the questions window, if you can see and hear, just let me know. That would be super helpful. Yep, awesome. Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate it. So about, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, we were talking about this concept of on-device assets, also known as on-device data. And let me just scroll down here in PowerPoint and show you what I'm talking about. We're talking about the ability to put things into your TransForm application that you can get to from your TransForm application that are files and documents and other types of data. So in particular, the three big use cases are training videos. So if there's some sort of video that maybe a service worker in the field needs to be able to access offline from the app, you can add that to your TransForm application. PDFs, instruction manuals, also a very big use case. And there are lots of other file types too. You might have Excel spreadsheets, you might have Word documents. And then last, but certainly not least, would be SQLite, which is a database system that can run right on the phone. And with SQLite, you could do something like have it so that when you scan a barcode, it looks up that barcode in a database. Let's say you're scanning a barcode that's on a piece of equipment, and you could look up service information about that equipment. When was it last serviced? What to look out for? And also just to verify that you're on the right place. So very, very useful and for lots of different reasons. And I did discuss last time, and I'm going to sort of review how you get the data onto the device and how you access it in TransForm. So we're going to go through that quickly, but then I have a follow-up to show you some new tools that have been built in Alpha Anywhere, a companion product to TransForm, that make this job much, much easier. So to begin, when you want to add assets that you want to access on a phone, there are three main steps. The first thing is that you put the files somewhere on a server. Now, very often, I'd say more often than not nowadays, people, what we come across, are using Amazon S3 to keep those sorts of files stored, because it's a place where you can make sure that you have a secure connection. It's inexpensive. It has a very robust infrastructure. And you don't have the headaches, of course, of managing servers yourself. You're using a cloud-based system. So S3 storage from Amazon seems to be the one that most people use, and it's one that we are supporting actually have integrated quite tightly into the product, and I'll show you how that works too. The next thing you need to do, though, once all the files are there, is you need to build this special file called a manifest. And this file gets loaded into your account in TransForm Central. And it tells it where all the assets are, what kind of assets they are, where to find them, and what folder to put them in when it's time to retrieve them. It also has information about version numbers, so that you can have it so that if you update an asset but you keep the same name, it'll pull down the new copy when appropriate. So let's go on, and I'm going to show you a couple more examples. So here, this is the JSON manifest file that I was telling you about, and you get to it right in TransForm's Home tab, and you click Define On-Device Assets, and there's this box here, and that's where you put in the JSON, and here's a close-up of the JSON. And it took on this format, basically. The URL, this is where it's located. In this case, I had a manual for a Zamboni. That's one of those ice resurfacing machines for ice skating rinks, and I had that in PDF format. And I told TransForm, this is a file, this is where it's located, and I want to put it in a folder called PDF Docs, and this is version 1 of that document. The next one is the break fix video. That's an MP4 file, and I told it it's also a file, and it goes in videos, and that should be version 1. So now you can kind of see how to do this yourself, right? I mean, building out this JSON file in a text editor isn't terribly complicated, but what will happen, But what happens is, if you have an awful lot of files, it gets really tedious, and we actually have a way around that. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But before I do, let's talk about what happens once you have built this file and you've gotten the assets onto the phone. Once it's on the phone, you're going to use the TransForm programming language to call the file viewer command. Now, file viewer is a really cool function because it can look up in your phone and see which applications are best for which types of file types. So, for example, if you have Adobe Acrobat, that might be the PDF viewer that you have installed on your phone. If you don't have Adobe Acrobat, maybe you'll be using the Preview app, which comes, say, with iOS, or the equivalent one for Android. The point is, we don't know what's installed on the phone, but your phone knows what's installed on the phone. And with File Viewer, when you give it a command like File Viewer zambonimanual.pdf, it goes and finds the best app for that, and it opens it up. And at the top of the app, it puts a Done button, so you could come back to TransForm when you're done reviewing the material. So that's sort of the full circle there. And then here's some code that we went over briefly for how in TPL for how to interact with a SQLite database on your device. I'm not going to go into that in big detail, but I am going to talk a little bit about how to package up a SQLite database to get it onto the device. We'll go over that today as well. So let's move on to that was review from before. Let's move on to on-device data part 2. Okay. So we're taking a look now at Alpha Anywhere. For those of you who are new to Alpha Anywhere but only know TransForm, Alpha Anywhere is a low-code product that Alpha produces for building both mobile and web applications. In fact, TransForm itself was written using Alpha Anywhere. And we keep building in more and more tighter integrations because these two products can work really nicely together. In this case, what we've built a special Genie, a tool that allows you to gather together your on-device assets, upload those assets, and create the manifest file for you. And that can save you an awful lot of work, especially when you're dealing with a lot of files, and it also makes it more foolproof. So let's talk about how you would go about doing that. The first thing you would want to do, and this system uses right now the S3, Amazon S3. So that's the example that I'm going to go with today. If you don't have an S3 account, they're easy to get. You go to aws.amazon.com, you sign up for an account. I think you need to provide a credit card number, but if you're below a certain usage amount, you will not, in fact, be charged for your use. So it's actually kind of a good thing. I've had it for a while. I've never been dinged. So once you get into the Amazon web console, they call it, we went ahead and we created a brand new S3 bucket. And I gave the bucket a name, and I chose the region that it was located in. This made sense to me because the server I'm running it on is also fairly close. We have, they have regions in all over the world, so choose one which makes the most sense for your application. I basically left all the defaults alone as I was creating it. So here was the next page of that setup process. After that, I clicked next. And again, I took all of the defaults. I clicked next again. And I finally clicked the create bucket, and it created the bucket for me. And it returned me back here to the console. And in the console, there's my TransForm Tuesday bucket. Now, there's something that I need, much like an API key when you're working with TransForm and Alpha Anywhere. With S3, we need to actually build what's called an S3 connection string. This will allow us to connect to S3 from Alpha and put the files into the file bucket. And it will also allow those files to be there, so when TransForm comes and downloads them, that's where they'll be. So to do that, I went into the console and I selected my bucket, and I said, in my security credentials section, I was able to create what are called security credentials. So I found that under access keys. You'll find that here. And basically, when I clicked to open it, it showed me an access key and my secret access key, which I have covered up here in my slide so that no one steals it. All right. Once I had that information, I went back into Alpha Anywhere and I built a storage connection string. Let me show you live where that is. Here's a screenshot of it, but it's just as easy to show it to you. I found that here in Tools, and I went down to Storage Connection Strings, and that's it right there. Uh-oh, I'm showing my key after all. Oh, well, I guess I'll have to change it. And that's where it is. To build it, I just said New. I gave it a name. Let's say it's my name. not actually going to save this, and I said build connection string. We have different options here. Right now, though, for that Genie, we're only supporting Amazon S3, so use that one for now. You could choose the region, just make sure it's the same region. Again, it was US East. And then those access keys and secret keys I just showed you about, you're gonna paste those in, and finally you'll test the connection. Let me show you one that I've already built. Here it is. I test the connection, and it succeeded. So there is my. That's how I built up my storage string, which I called my S3 connection string. All right. Now that the connection string is built, we'll do this live too. I'm gonna go into the tools menu, and I'm gonna go down into more, and I'm gonna choose on-device data builder for TransForm / PhoneGap applications. And I'm gonna click on that, and that is the dialog box that I see. Now, all I have to do in order to build and upload my assets is select them here in this dialog box. And so I'm going to go over to Add Item. I'm going to click Add Item, and it's going to ask me what type of item. And here are my choices. I can insert a folder worth of information. I can insert an individual file. I can actually create and insert a SQL database. We'll get to that in a moment. And probably the easiest one is a URL. That just means that into the manifest, just point the URL to an asset that's already there. You don't need to upload it to the server because it's already on the server. But in this case, let's just choose say a file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here in file name, and it just basically is choosing right from my computer. Now here is my picture library. And so let's say I'm just going to choose desert.jpg. I'm going to choose that one photo. There it is. Great. And we're going to click OK. What I could do here, though, okay. Oh, I need to say where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it into a folder called images. All right, so that selected just one image. That was easy. But what I can also do is I can add a folder, and I can go here into File Explorer. And here I am back at my pictures library. Now let's say along with JPEGs, I had some text files and some other kinds of files, but I was only interested in JPEGs. I can actually do a wildcard search here, which is pretty helpful. I think I need to do it on the next page, though. Let's try start at JPEG. Nope. What I did was I simply selected one. I could just go ahead and change this to asterisk.jpg. And anything with got a JPEG next to it, it's going to pick up from that folder. So there it is. I'm going to actually cancel out of that. The other thing I can do is I can actually save and load these settings. I might want to have this manifest in many different applications. In fact, I've done one earlier before I started the webinar. So I'm going to actually load one that I already have. It's called My Data. And you'll see, once again, I did this thing with the multiple files. Now, let's say I wanted to create a SQLite database. We'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to add an item, and the folder I'm going to choose is, the item I'm going to choose is SQLite database. Create is the type of operation I'm going to do, and now I get to define the database. And so this is like a little database builder right here. I can add a table to it. So let's say I wanted to look up products on my phone. So I'm going to create a table called products. All right. And it says this is undefined. So let's go ahead and edit that table definition. And it's going to ask us, how would you like to populate that table? And I'm going to use a SQL query. So let me click on SQL query. And as you see, my choices here expand. I had some other options as well. I could certainly put in a big list of static data, or I could have an XBasic function create it for me. So that would be a good thing to do. For example, if you've written an XBasic function that calls a web service, you might put that in there. So here we are. The query type is SQL query, and the connection string is, I'm going to click on it here. It's just, this is a normal SQL query connection string. If you're new to Alpha anywhere, this is basically something that lets you connect to almost any kind of database. I already have one set up. It's a demo account, but if I wanted to create a new one, I could just say specify, I could choose build, and then from this connection type dialog box, I can choose really from any one of these options, including OData, Salesforce, Postgres, Oracle, and there are other ones as well. You can also use Microsoft Excel as a data source if you wished, and there are more, but I'm going to cancel. Instead, I'm just going to use this Access Database Northwind, the one we typically always use in demos. There it is, excellent. And I'm going to click OK. Oops, I need to select it, sorry. Select. And I click that radio button, and OK. So now it's going to ask me, well, what table do I want out of that? And I'm going to choose the products table. And then what fields from the products table? I'm going to choose them all. Oops, select all. OK, there we go. So there it is. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to click OK again. And again, oops, I need to say where I'm going to save my SQL database. So the SQL database name on the device is going to be called My Database. Now notice something here. It says zips SQLite database. You do want to do that. It'll take a lot less space. It'll be a lot quicker to get it onto the device. Leave that option checked. And it must have, oops, I need to give it the name .db at the end. All right, thank you, Alpha. Okay, so far I have selected a folder which has a bunch of images in it and a SQLite database. And now let's say I want to put all of these into my TransForm application. This is what I would do. The first thing I would do is I would probably first define my S3 properties. And so when I define my S3 properties, that's the storage connection string that we just built a little bit earlier. So I'm going to click on that link, and I'm just going to choose the my S3 connection string. The folder name, I think you can leave this blank and have it put in the root, but I tend to like put it in something called like my app or something, so it's one level down. And then we need to give a name to the manifest file. I'm just going to call it my manifest. All right. So now I've defined these properties, and I can go ahead and generate that file. And over here, this little checkbox, which is grayed out, means you can't click on it, but it indicates that those files were generated. So the next thing I can do is I can upload these files to S3. I'm just going to click that button. And this usually doesn't take very long. That was pretty quick. So that took my entire product database and all of those images, and it tossed it up onto S3. Would that take about a second? Not too bad. And then the last thing I want to do now is take this and let TransForm know that this manifest is ready for it. So the way to do that is I click the Show Manifest URL JSON. And just in case you had forgotten that, up here in the instructions, it says TransForm users, paste this URL into the prompt in TransForm Central. And I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to click Show Manifest URL. So there's the manifest URL. I'm going to go ahead and copy that to the clipboard so that I can use that in TransForm Central. But if you want to take a peek at what's going on behind the scenes, we can actually take a look at the JSON file behind it. And you'll see the JSON file. This is the manifest file that we would have otherwise been creating by hand, which I showed you a little earlier in the PowerPoint. Now you'll notice it has two items in there. Remember I said I had a whole bunch of pictures? Well, that's true, but they're all kept in a zip file, which I put in images, and they're calling this temp folder 1.zip. And also this is another one called zip. Now the cool thing is when these get downloaded onto the device, they get unzipped there. So the advantage to this is that if you have, say, 1,000 images, right? If you're transferring them one at a time onto a mobile device, it's going to take an awful long time. But if you have thousands of images and you put them into a zip file and you bring them down and unzip them on the device, it becomes very practical, and you can do it within a few moments. All right, so let me go ahead and close that. So I have copied the manifest to my clipboard, and now I'm going to go back over to TransForm. And I'm going to go down here to define on-device assets. Okay, and if you remember from last week, I had, or a few weeks ago, these are my other ones here. I'm just actually going to wipe out this manifest. I'm going to paste in my own. Oops. I think I do. Oh, hang on, that's not right. to get the manifest URL, paste in the URL into the transform central define on device assets. All right, well, according to this, I should be able to paste it in the form of a URL. On the other hand, if I didn't want to do it that way, I certainly could just go over to here and I could grab this. That's what I'm going to do. The other way may work, I just didn't test it, so I'm not going to show it that way. I'm going to paste that in, and that's all I need. So now TransForm knows, and my TransForm app will know next time I open it up, and next time I publish this, that it needs to go up to Amazon S3, pull down and unzip a bunch of images, and also go to Amazon S3 and pull down the database and put the images in the images folder and the database in the SQLite folder. And then from there, I can run back into TransForm and write some TPL to start accessing those files and that database. So let me just make sure I've gone over everything I wanted to talk about today. I think I did. I showed you how to build a connection string for storage. I showed you how to build a connection string also for connecting to a database. We reviewed how to build an S3 bucket and how to get your thing. Hang on, and an S3 bucket and how to get the access credentials that you're going to need in Alpha Anywhere. I explained that everything does get zipped up so that it moves quickly from the device back down to the thing, from the server down to the device. And I showed you how to put together your own SQL database. So looking at here, oh, thank you, Sarah. Sarah has pointed out that, hey, yeah, you could in fact just paste in that manifest JSON URL. It works fine. And if you take a look in the chat window, everyone, she has posted directly to the documentation to show you how it works. Thank you very much, Sarah, for that. Yes. Okay, so great. Time for questions. And here's question number 1, and it's a great one, which is if you have multiple tenants using TransForm, multiple users, for example, using TransForm, will they download the manifest file? Will they all download the same manifest files? The answer right now is, unfortunately, yes, they will. Right now, we only have the assets defined on an account basis. We are looking into making it available on either a user basis or maybe on a form basis, or have it connect somehow with the permissions system. But right now, today, understand that if you have 2 different clients, for example, it would be better for you to create separate accounts for those 2 different clients than to have them share one account and use the permissions system for that, because they're going to end up pulling down each other's stuff onto the phone. Now, you can hide the stuff from them, you can do all kinds of clever things, but that's still not an optimal way to work. Are there any other questions here? See one from Sarah. Nope. I guess that's it. Well, if you do have any other questions, please let me know. Send an email to tfservice, that's transform service at alphasoftware.com. It's monitored by a team of people here who are happy to get back to you. I hope you found today's session useful, and I hope that you show up to next Transform Tuesday. Thank you very much for attending. Have a great week. Take care and goodbye.